Feeling okay?
I'll just keep going.
Pursuant to the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, the City Council of Bastrop, Texas will hold a special workshop meeting on Tuesday, March 29, 2016 at 6 p.m. the current time at Bastrop City Hall Council Chambers, where we are, 1311 Chestnut Street, Bastrop, to consider the following matters. First is call to order, or call us to order. We have our entire council present and our city manager. We're glad to see you up and moving around, Mike.
I don't know what's going on.
Let's say we're going to move into a workshop session. We'll recess to that for a special meeting to convene the workshop session to discuss review current capital projects and future projects regarding possible issues for a general bond election as item A. I want to say that if there's anybody, we don't have forms out tonight, but this is a very casual beginning conversation for us. If somebody wants to speak up on something, raise your hand. We'll let you identify yourself and just ask you to confine yourselves, to a short conversation, if you will. And because we're brainstorming at this point and responding to what Mike's identified and whatever else council members have thought of. So, Mike, let's move ahead with item A.
Can I ask before manager gets started, as you read A, do you have a time frame of where we'll go after tonight on a backup meeting or follow-up meetings to this? Because we have right here, and it's worded right, future budgets, tax rates, or fees assessed by the city of Bastrop.
Well, as of tonight, by the end of July, we have 121 days to get this process complete. So we will need a follow-up meeting within 3 to 4 weeks from tonight, because I'm working with our financial advisor because we're going to be refinancing some debt and paying some debt off. I think I'm going to be able to come back and give the council a little bit broader latitude of what you can issue bonds for than I could tonight.
Well, so what's your starting point for a number without? I
would say that $5 to $10 million is a good starting range.
That's a good, 10. I like the 10.
Because two things that I've talked about, and Tracy, we talked with Dan. Keep in mind that over the 5-year horizon, and this has been historically true, that our tax base has been increasing. So as your tax base increases, that's more dollars that you can contribute into your ad valorem debt service, and so you can lower your debt. So what you might be able to issue $1 million for today, 2 years from now, maybe $1.5 million. So that's why you want to sequence your bonds when you do a general bond obligations, identify your critical ones and develop a critical path. That, okay, the first series will be these first 3 projects, we issue them, we get them done, then we do the second series, and that way your tax rate will stay consistent as you go through it.
And we'd be kind of master planning for the future. And some smart guys will figure all that out. Willie?
Mayor, the question I was getting to with the manager was that, and he mentioned the number 5 to 10 million that you asked about where the starting point was, and I think that's important with the information. It comes back in a month because it's 5 million. And as far as the general fund debt, it'll tell you how much that'll affect your tax rate. And then when you get into the water and wastewater or electrical or whatever, if we do issue bonds on that, shows really how it'll affect your rates on that end.
And I'm sure you're still working on our kind of rule of thumb about 60 cents.
Yes, sir.
Evaluation.
And we are also in the current process of doing a rate study that when we get into the water and wastewater projects, will give you an indication of what your rates will look like over a period of time.
And those are two separate. The enterprise funds will be different.
Yes.
Okay. Separate.
I just have a couple of quick announcements to make. I can't discuss them. I'm just going to make them. And if you want to have any questions, you can ask me afterwards. But the DMO meeting scheduled for Thursday night has been postponed until next Tuesday night, April the 5th. Miss Ray's husband's in ICU in Austin, and it was a conflict, and I told her, don't worry about it, we'll push it off till Tuesday. And Tuesday really does work better because our new Main Street manager will be on board, and one of the reasons I hired her was because she had DMO experience. so she'll be able to sit in on the floor, and we're not going to lose that much time. And I just got off the phone with Catherine when I walked in here, but I said, you just stay with your husband. We'll move it till Tuesday night. It'll be 6 o'clock in here Tuesday night. And we'll get a mass emailing out in the morning.
And we're going to do, it's not exactly a meeting, we're going to post it in case there's a quorum here, but
Right.
we're not going to have a formal meeting, just a conversation with the community.
Right, and Catherine's going to facilitate it, and what components of the RFQ are going to be important to the community. And then she'll take all that, put it into a document to give to the council.
Great, thank you, Mike.
The second item is I checked the district court calendar up till Tuesday night at 5 o'clock, and there were no TROs filed. So on Wednesday morning, our SOA hearing went forward. I did get a little nervous when the judge came out and says, I got a really bad cold today, and I thought he was going to say, we're going to postpone it for 2 weeks, and I about turned ash and white, but he says, we're going forth. So we wrapped up about 2 o'clock on Friday afternoon. I did send a brief summary, but the transcript will tell it all, and I've got an expedited transcript coming that I'll make available to the council. So we finally got over the milestone of getting our hearing and done and completed. And so I just wanted to make you aware of that.
Right.
Gary, I apologize between dealing with SOA and next week I'm going to be tied up with Pine Forest. I'm still working on putting some history together on projects, but you'll have that in a couple of weeks to compare, because we got two sets of projects. We got projects that are complete, and we have projects in transition, and we have some projects in planning. So I got to break them into 3 categories for you.
I would appreciate.
And I realized after I put this together, I tried a different format tonight, and it would have helped if I would have put a table of contents, because your first section is going to be streets, your second section is going to be facilities, and your third section is going to be water and wastewater improvements. Now, and if you look here, like on Exhibit A for streets, or utility improvements, streets, if you look at the amount, there's a page number. That just refers back to a picture where the proposed improvement's going to be made. And then we'll be putting this into a booklet as we start creating a history of what we're discussing here tonight. Now, from a street perspective, what I did is I went through the 2015 minutes and kind of picked up where council had suggested maybe we ought to do this street. Back when we started the budget, we only discussed about 5 streets, but I did identify 11 different streets that at one point or another we brought up in a discussion in 2015. So I've listed those with approximate costs, and I'll go down through those. But most importantly tonight, this is not all about what I think. You all got to have some input in this too. And this is just kind of a primer to get you thinking about some things. So I think the easiest way, and that's why I paperclipped it, if you'll put your street over here and then you can follow through with your pictures, we can walk through this. And then I'll be glad to answer any questions on any specific street, and then if you think I've left some off, I'd like to hear them, because we'll come back at the next council meeting, even before we have a meeting here, with an updated list to include any street that you feel I may have left off. One that has consistently been on a list in some sort for several years is the reconstruction of MLK from Chestnut Street to College. There's going to be some utility work associated with this, and that's shown in Exhibit A, but the total cost of that project is $2 million. The reconstruction of Water Street from Pine to College, and that's on page 4, and that's from College Street to Water, is $250,000, and that does include some utility work. The next one, the reconstruction of Laurel with stormwater improvements from Wilson to Pecan. A portion of the wastewater main will need to be relocated, and the estimated project cost is $750,000 for this one. This was one that Gary asked me to put together, and I put it together in two sections. The reconstruction of Carter Street from the railroad tracks to Magnolia Street. That's 2,150 linear feet of paving, a 35-foot street width from back to curb, does not address any utility improvements. And that red section on page 6 is showing the section that would be improved. And it shows approximately, as I said, 2,150 linear foot. Then, in discussing with staff and with Gary, it was thought, and on page 7, you'll note I've included the floodplain map in here, because to connect Carter Street, we're going to have to deal with floodplain. And so if you turn over to page 8, the yellow represents item number 5, and this would be picking up Carter Street from Magnolia to Mesquite Street. So we'd come down and pick it up, and you can see we're going to have to deal with some floodplain. The cost of that is around $696,000. Now, I want to say that's a very preliminary estimate, because when you get into floodplain, we've not gone out into the field and done any detailed surveying work, but that would be the cost to take it all the way and connect it back into Mesquite.
So it would be both parts of the L.
Yes, but I broke them down into two parts.
It looks like it's about $1 million investment to go all the way from the tracks
Yep,
to Wilson Street.
and that doesn't include any utilities.
Will there be any utility improvements put in by the developer as part of that?
He will have to put some off-site improvements, and we'll have to negotiate that with him when he gets into the subdivision. Okay?
I thought we were going to negotiate some of the costs of the street as well.
Yes.
Okay. Mike, can I ask you a question back on the first two?
Yes, sir.
Maybe goes along with this one. Other than the sidewalks on MLK and being concrete, what drives the cost up? Because it's only one block difference from Chestnut to College as far as starting on Pine Street to College Street.
I think our drainage is
Okay.
drainage is our biggest one on that one.
Okay, I was just wondering what's driving up the cost, $1.7 million difference?
It's the drainage issue on an MLK, and we cannot run on one street, the sidewalk consistently all on one side. We're going to be switching back and forth because of the way the right-of-way runs down through there.
Okay.
And I might have some more backup detail in my folder there.
Are you talking about the way the right-of-way runs on MLK?
It doesn't run straight, so you may go 3 blocks and then have to cross over and put 2 more blocks of sidewalks and then come back, and you've got that bridge to deal with as well. Okay, and Water Street is probably the biggest on Water Street is the utilities that have to be replaced on that one, Willie.
Yeah.
And on 3rd Street,
So it wasn't really the cost of concrete versus asphalt?
no.
Okay.
And Laurel is, we got to do a lot of drainage work in Laurel Street. I think we discussed that back at budget time. The next one that I put down is the extension of Blakey Lane. And this is approximately 2,100 linear feet of paving, a 40-foot street from back of curb to back of curb, a little bit wider street because that's a collector street which will tie in at Riverside Grove subdivision. This does not include cost of right-of-way acquisition and no utility improvements. Just the street extension is $1,250,000. And we would be dealing with, I've identified 3 different property owners we would have to get right away from to get that street extended.
Is it possible that the owners would donate the property?
I have had that happen in the past
I'm
because,
thinking it will improve the value of the property substantially.
yes,
This is worth a lot of money to the people that own that property. I would think they would be happy to donate, and I think we ought
I
to
have
look at
experienced that in my career, that if a person understands real estate values, when you put utilities on the property or streets, it greatly enhances the
Yeah,
value.
it is.
That's one where it's not impossible that VEDC might want to go in with this.
Right.
I wouldn't say it's likely, but I'd say it's not impossible, because it would create some new opportunities economically.
And the other reason I didn't go to the extent of figuring utilities, because this is pretty much all barren land, and we will provide right-of-way widths, but that would be a developer's cost to extend utilities, because we could put a water line in there and it could sit there for 5 years, never, and so that's why I didn't go to the extent of doing any utility analysis.
So you just have a utility easement as part of
On
that?
both sides of the
and it would
street.
go in later?
Yes. Plan for it,
Right.
of course, in the design, but yes.
And also something that I think Willie's pointed out a few times is that, I know we're going to be working some on the south side of 71, but if 71 were shut down, we could at least get out of here to the west.
Yes.
By using 969 through these streets,
Yeah,
if we put this street in.
Yeah, we could come down Loop 150, down to Old Austin Highway, then right on out through. Yes, sir. Okay, the next one is one that Willie brought up some time back, and that's the extension of Agnes Street. And I took it just to the Pecan Park subdivision, and that's approximately 440 linear feet, 31 foot of width of curb back to back. Does not include any cost of right-of-way or utility improvements. But
Is that a platted street?
we do not think that that was platted. I cannot find a plat that shows that.
We don't have that, an easement there for a road.
No, I cannot find, I've gone through plats and I've not been able to find one.
Why wouldn't that be a developer-built street?
It could be, but my concern, as I mentioned when we talked a couple, 3 weeks ago, Hassler Street is, if you look at all the development that's occurred in there, on Saturdays and Sundays and even Friday evenings, cars are getting queued all the way back up to Agnes before they can get through the stoplight. And I think that's why Willie suggested we look at extending that so that when Pecan Park comes in, at least that'd be a good connection to relieve some of that overflow traffic.
Okay, I'm missing something. Is there something besides this map?
That's it.
Well,
It's just,
how's it going to relieve it here, just dead ends?
well, when this is Pecan Park, and he'll have to connect to that when he develops.
Why wouldn't we wait until he gets ready to?
Well, I think we would, wouldn't we? I mean,
We would.
Oh, but you're talking about the several phases, I'm sorry.
Yes, I mean,
forgot that.
I'm just bringing up, this would not be a high priority, but at some point, if he takes off with his commercial development, I want you to be aware that this is going to be a missing link.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I wasn't
Okay.
thinking about long range.
And the one, of course, that we've talked about for several years is Marie and Hassler Street extension on page 11. We have had some preliminary work done, and no matter how you run it through the Hampton Inn property, this alignment has the least amount of impact. But if we are to put that street in, and this property over to the west is a platted subdivision with no right-of-way dedicated, we will end up damaging or taking some of the property of the hotel, and we would have to take that into consideration. But at some point, this will become the critical street to get out to 304. And I know the planning department have had several people coming in and out at looking at developing this track. Now, one of the things that we could do that has been brought up in the past is if somebody's seriously developing that, we do have money set aside for some right-of-way acquisition. We could pose to the developer that we would use that money to construct the street in exchange for the right-of-way, and then deal with the Hampton on the damage to some of their property.
you know, the thing though, I would look at this and say to the Hampton, you know, we're gonna bring a phenomenal amount of traffic in front of your hotel. Your hotel is the most hidden hotel in all of Bastrop.
I agree.
You will get your money back many times over by having a street in front of your property.
Didn't we talk about also at one point that line, if it goes out to 304, would essentially run along the boundary between two properties?
Right, and that's,
And that we would, at that point, I think we talked about building half the street, if the property to the south was not part of the development, and then when somebody ever came along and developed it, we could put the other half in and let them pay for it.
That would be a possibility.
Mike, is Agnes Street, where you talked about being extended toward, I'm gonna say Pecan Park or Orchard Parkway, does that eventually go out? Which one ties into Home Depot Way?
Is it Agnes? Agnes.
Oh, I'm mistaken, I'm sorry. I thought it was.
Both of them do. Through, the one, Hassler Extension follows the property line all the way out to 304, and Agnes gets out to 304. We had two streets under the existing comp plan.
But if Agnes was extended out toward Home Depot, if you
Right.
came out of Walmart, you'd go straight out 304.
Right.
But it looks like both those would be subject to an awful lot of developer input to me.
Yes. But where the line stops, that's all undeveloped property, and of course, the developer would be responsible for putting his portion of the street in. I just have to bring to your attention, I can't dispute that Gary's position that everybody would enhance the value of their property, but it's a platted lot with no dedicated right-of-way.
Okay.
I just want to bring that to your attention.
So we managed to agree to a plat.
Long before we got here, so we're not held for
I
this.
can't blame Willie and Doc.
I don't know, I'd have to go back and look at the day of the recordation.
Turn around, blame you back.
You know, the other thing I would think that
Let's
even
just
the
deal with it
extension of
instead of blaming
Agnes
Oh,
might
that's
be
an interesting
something
idea.
that Pecan Park would be interested in helping with funding, because it would really enhance their property to be able to access to and from Walmart from there.
I would agree, but he's already expressed concerns about having to put his portion of Agnes in. So I'm just keeping you informed, but I understand, because that does make a lot of sense, and logistically, by doing it that way, we kind of stair-stepped into getting down to the big one.
Mike, what portion of this is zone commercial? All of it?
I would say everything from the bottom line here, right here, this line right here, up is commercial.
Is all commercial, okay.
Okay? And then,
Do you have a number, like, just out of curiosity, from Orchard Parkway on Agnes Way out to 304? How much further that is in that?
I can get that for you, look. Okay, I can get that.
By the next meeting, when we have our next go-around.
Okay. All right. And then this just shows you the properties that we're going through and how we tie into that utility easement and cross the LCRA easement. The next one is number 9. Because of the development that has occurred on Childress Street between Pecan Park and Bastrop Station and the other shopping center, Childress Street is just about been cut up about as many times as it can be cut up. There's no question that probably Pecan Park would have to share in that cost, and there's a gap between where the pavement of Childress ends before it gets to Pecan Park. But I think we're going to have to give some serious consideration to that street, because that's going to be a major thoroughfare into that subdivision, and traffic is just increasing exponentially. And I did go out there Sunday and walk that street, and it's in pretty tough shape.
Is that right-of-way wide enough to make that a 4-lane street?
I don't think so. I think we're calling for a 36-foot street on that.
Because it really ought to be with the traffic.
But that would give us 2 12-foot traffic lanes and a 12-foot center turn lane. So that would, okay. The next one is Jefferson Street. That has come up repeatedly over a period of time. I don't know if we should wait until we see what things are going to look like after the phase 3 of TxDOT improvements are going to go, but I put it in there because going through the minutes, it's been mentioned numerous times. The complete reconstruction is about 1,900 linear feet. Also includes sidewalks and water and wastewater improvements. And there's your projected cost. And the last street is Phase 3 of Farm Street. We've done the first 2 phases, and that street has really handled the traffic well. But the portion you see here in yellow, there's not much of a street left, and it's kind of the philosophy of finishing up a project that we started. We've got 2 good phases done. It's enhanced traffic flow and exponentially with the improvements. And so,
Mike, I can't tell what portion of farm this is. Are you talking about which?
from Pecan
Down to the river.
to the entrance to the park.
Yeah.
Okay. I got it backwards then. Okay.
I'm sorry, I should have marked, I'm
It
sorry.
didn't say in here, it just said phase 3.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it should be from Pecan Street to the entrance to the park. I'm sorry, I'll correct that.
Mike, can I ask you a question back on number 9?
Sure.
Well, we talked about Childers Street and the improvements, and I don't question those improvements that are going to have to be made from after all the construction. What did we ever decide on Perkins Street? If that, is that subdivision, that road going to be open on the backside, coming out that backside, or is it not going to be open?
We have not had that discussion, Willie, so that's a good point, because we're gonna put more traffic. After being out there this weekend, he's blowing and going.
I know they're moving, but I'm just concerned that if that road's opened up, that street's not wide enough to carry that traffic.
Yep.
I don't think it is.
You talking about doing, opening up 2 Perkins or redoing Perkins?
I think Perkins is going to be done, and I don't know if it's, if you're going to widen it, it's going to have to be done on the, I think on the west side. I think if you're going to, expand that road, but I don't know. I'm just curious about the.
We agreed that with that next phase of Pecan Park, they have to get a street out to Perkins, right?
And he'll be responsible for some of the cost of the improvement, but I think Willie's making a good point. We should add
What do we
Perkins
do?
Street to this list.
Yeah, what do we do about once we put that in, you're right. there's gonna
Well,
be
you got a
more
cul-de-sac and a lift station down at the end right now, doesn't he?
Yeah, and he's got it blocked off but the way he's got houses going up out there right now, he's probably gonna be coming in with a second plat here pretty quick.
We have something where you can bust through for emergencies?
Yes, he
Okay,
does.
But we don't have a street?
No.
Okay.
It's just a Cleachy road that he put down there as he said he would, and I did. But I will add Perkins Street to the list, because I think that is an important street. Any other streets that I overlooked that the council would like to try?
I think with all the conversation of traffic up on the north end of town, that it'd be interesting if we could, and there's 2 or 3 connections with this, if we extended Linden Street to the highway. I think that might be a quicker fix for getting another access to 95 without the expense of extending Carter and connecting it to Mesquite. We'd have to give up a little bit of our yard, but we need to buy that piece of property on the highway anyway.
You're gonna get to that when we get to facilities,
Okay, you're way ahead of me.
okay? Any other streets, but that's a good point.
And that's already platted, right? Linden Street is platted.
But not where we would want the street to come out, because that comes right out at the top of the crest of that hill. We'd want to drop it down. Yeah, you'll see that here when we get.
That's our property.
It
Or
is,
would-
yeah.
or
It
would be
is.
our
It
property.
would be our property, yes, sir.
Not,
The Linden Street right away.
not to the
Right now, it
highway.
belongs to LCR.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, you mean,
It's that property
it's
we're
platted,
talking
so that's already ours?
Yeah, that's part of the Ardell map. Linden Street right away is ours. But I don't think that alignment really lines up best with 95. We'd want to shift it down a little bit, and that's why the importance of that LCR property comes so important.
Good.
And page 16 just gives you an idea of the infrastructure cost improvements associated with the street reconstructions. Like I said, we had to put a lot of estimates together fairly quickly. We did have data on some of the infrastructure Some we didn't feel was warranted, and we didn't add in.
So this is in addition to what you've listed here, or just an explanation?
It's just an explanation, further explanation for it. The next page is page 17. The first one, I hope to bring back in the next 30 to 45 days, that we can fund the police department facility out of fund balance and not have to create a debt to do that. And with the price of construction going up, the longer we wait, the more it's going to cost, and you'll see that in just a minute. The next item is to give you a thought to what you're going to start looking at. Please keep in mind, this is just very preliminary. It's to start the discussion, but I've listed a new fire station on the west side of Bastrop. On page 18 is a preliminary layout of what the fire station would look like, because it is taking into account future planning, bringing on a paid fire department, having 3 bays for drive-through, classroom instructions. This building is 9,700 square feet, and we did get a contractor just to give us a bid per linear foot for 9,000, based upon this layout, and it was 1.9 million. And that does not include cost of property or site development of property.
Or vehicles.
Or vehicles, right. But I cannot believe, since we built City Hall, how much construction has gone. This building was 15,000 square feet. We finished out 12.5, and we came in a little under $2 million. So that just gives you an idea of how much construction costs have gone up since we built this building.
When was that, 2008,
11.
11?
We've been here 5 years now. So, and this still needs some tweaking. It's preliminary, but again, I wanted to start this discussion because I think it's going to become a topic that the council's going to have to deal with. Purchase of the additional property to expand the public works yard, that's found on page 18. It shows a picture of the LCRA property. 19, you're right. Sorry about that, Gary. I could not disclose the price. I have been negotiating a price with LCRA, and I'll be talking to you about that at our next council meeting. But I will say that LCRA falls under the same guidelines as a city because they're a governmental entity. They cannot give property away. They have to get the fair market value of the property. But as you were, the mayor and Gary were speaking about, why this property is so important is because it would allow us to shift down where we would want to extend Linden, because currently Linden is right at the edge of the paid parking lot of the public works yard. As you see, if you would have extended it out from there, that's not a very good spot to bring a street out onto. And walking that, and going out there and visit with Trey, more along the property line right there would be a more advantageous connection.
What's the property north?
LCRA. And I think in between there we have state highway right of way. We may own all of that, Mayor. This is LCRA's map on what they say they own.
So we would have Linden on the top of it, and then there'd be a small strip in between.
Right.
Which we could maybe swap out for or something to.
Or just tied on to the lily fields on that. So
Will that street come out on 95 north or south of what? More to the south or more to the north?
I think more to the south would be advantageous.
Where Linden's coming out right now at our property line?
Yes, sir.
But you're saying it would need to be a little south of where Linden is?
Yes, it would need to be south of the
Yeah,
current.
between Clyde's barn and his house, somewhere
Yes,
in there.
yes. And I did add on at the last minute, it dawned on me, we did spend money to get the old iron bridge looked at. The estimate at the time was $1 million, and I know there continues to be a lot of discussion about redoing the lights on the old iron bridge. And it gets back to me, the chicken or the egg. Do we fix it first and put the lights on, or put the lights on and fix it? Because part of that is going to paint it. Now, when I was putting this together, I got here in March of '93, and the state had just finished painting that like the month I got here. And they didn't take it down to the bare metal, they just did a spray over, and that spray has held for what, 20-plus years. So I think rather than taking it down to the metal, we would take the same approach and just spray it, because
You have to mitigate it
yes,
otherwise.
that's right. And then that price is just gonna go right out of sight.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
But, well, let's see, that's 23 years that paint job has held up, and that's pretty good. And I can tell you, the state probably got the lowest bid they could get just to get that paint on there. So, but that's a topic that keeps coming up with the Iron Bridge.
I think we should give the bridge spitters paintbrushes.
I was
And make
thinking
it
about the people that can't pay their fines at municipal court. But I could get the bridge fitters out there. It wouldn't take us more than 400 or 500 years to get it done.
Okay, if you, I should have shown on page 20 is the plat of that LCRA property. It shows where Linden Street is dedicated, and it shows that small strip in there. I don't know who owns that strip. It may just be no man's land.
Maybe it was never sold and it's ours.
That's right. It may just claim it by prescription. Okay. These were the facilities that stuck out to me. Again, I'm not saying this is all comprehensive. It's just a starting point. But I felt it was important to put on the old iron bridge, since we did pay $40,000 to tell us what we had to do to get it fixed. So,
Is there any identified expansion of the interior of this building?
no,
You don't have it, right now you're using that storage?
storage.
Okay,
But to me, that would be, I would rather sit back, phone to not debt service that, because we're not talking a big cost, unless we rolled it into like the fire station or the police station and did something like that.
That it is one contract?
Right, because to split up that small piece would be,
Well, I would just say if you're thinking about a departmental need
yes, I've come up with one.
in this building,
I have.
it would be good to think about how that could best be contracted to make it as cost effective
Okay.
as possible, so.
I will add that to the list. Finish on with City Hall.
Versus putting it in a budget some year. I mean, I don't know what it costs to do that kind of stuff, but it could be a one-year budget item, possibly.
Possibly.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, if,
Well, one of the things I'm working on, which you'll see at budget time, I've got a suggestion that I think will be favorably received by the council, but it is going to necessitate finishing out.
yeah, so, I mean, if needed, I think it should go on the list, and we can decide how to
Right.
deal with it.
Good
Okay.
point.
Good point, Gary.
So Mike, well, it looks like, what, $14 million?
It's getting up there.
But you got 10 million for us, so it's going to be easy.
Well, I haven't heard from y'all yet.
I want to hear about this 10 million is what I want to hear about. Okay.
One more
Okay.
section is our water and wastewater, and this is where you want to hang on to your chairs. It's on page 21, and it's a summary. Construction of the elevated storage tank and connection of the 16-inch main from Bear Hunters Drive. That's $3.6 million. We feel like we can fund the majority of that out of fund balance and impact fees. And then the construction of the 16-inch line from 71 to 95. Those are the most critical needs of the water system's efficiency. You've already approved the design work for that. And then I put a question mark. We've kind of swayed away the last year or so. Does the council wish to continue the $500,000 per year on system rehabilitation internally? We had a pretty aggressive program going there, and we pulled back, and it's also going to tie in with maybe the streets that you ultimately select. And then, depending upon where we end up with Bastrop Village, the wastewater plant and the connection of the main extension main coming out of the wastewater plant is $12,560,000. And then the construction of trunk mains 1, 2, and 3, and you can see those are identified on this map. The yellow is shows you trunk main 3, 1, 4. It shows all of them to you, so you can get a grasp. 2, I would say trunk main 1 is still up in the air whether we would do that when we first put the plan in, or we might postpone that to a later date. But clearly, trunk main 4, 3, and 2 would need to go in as part of the wastewater plant expansion.
Do we have a limit of some sort on what we can do with revenue bonds?
Yes, because one of the things we have to do is, in our debt service requirements, is at least try to keep 1 1/4 coverage on our bonded indebtedness.
But that could relate to rates.
Yes,
I mean, that could be
and that's
changed. So the real question is, and I've said this all along, I don't see how we can not do these things. And we can't not have water, and can't not have wastewater.
Right.
And if it costs more than somebody else, then it's just going to cost more.
And that's why I'm holding, if we can fund the water system improvements out of the fund balance and impact fees and adjust our rates to stair step up, we won't see the rate shock that we would if we went ahead now. And that's where I'm at a logjam with West Bastrop Village, and I'm telling them, you got to pay 25% of that cost right there, because it doesn't make sense for the city to have to bear that 25% so that your development can go forward. And so we're still in negotiations on that, and probably will have something to you at either the first or second council meeting in April.
I never heard of the Nixon line.
Yeah, that's something that Gene has added because he feels that will provide us some additional capacity up in this area here, Willie, if it ever was to change over and we got some vacant areas in there. That it's not a critical line. We debated it back and forth, and we went ahead and showed it, but it's not shown in any of the numbers that you've seen here tonight.
Is that somewhere around Pecan Park, or?
It's actually between Pond Park and the Nixon property. I don't know.
Oh, that's what they call it, Nixon, that's what the Nixon property is?
Yes.
Okay.
Pecan Park, you can see where Pecan Park is next to that little indent where the road is they put in. And then that next track is Nixon track, and then the other track is where ACC was looking at.
Okay.
And Gene and I did debate whether it was really needed to put 71 in there. I think that's open for further discussion, and that's why it was not put in any of the cost estimates that you've seen tonight.
Okay, council.
Now I'm going to turn it over to you and tell me what I forgot.
Anything else that besides what we've already named? Anybody?
Now what I've got, just so you want me to, the full extension of Agnes Street, Perkins Street improvements, you want to add it to the list. Possible extension of Linden to 95, and the finish out of City Hall. Those are some things you identified as we went through.
City Hall?
Finishing up the 2,500 square feet in here.
Okay.
You just asked me to add that to the list.
Yeah. Anything else? Doc?
Something I keep hearing a lot about, and I guess because I'm now into Eastern, is that first block from 71 onto Eastern Drive down past the clubhouse or past Bassano's there. That street keeps
You're gonna do that this year, aren't you? Letitia, that's gonna be done this year in-house with the
Because it
in-house.
washes out, I mean, because of the water and the flow and everything, and the residents keep asking me what's gonna be done about it, and I told them that, you know, it's being patched all the time, and the county keeps saying it's the city's project, and so I'm just wondering, so it's gonna be.
And it's in the fiscal 16-year budget.
Okay.
That was the in-house program that you funded for $750,000.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was done, because I hear nothing but comments about it.
Kelly, you got anything?
I think we covered everything I wanted.
Okay.
Same.
Willie?
I'm just, you know, pretty well just gonna let it ride until the next meeting to see how we package everything together and how it affects rates and tax rates and utility rates before I make a decision on what I'd like to see and not see.
Yeah. Anybody, same thing with you?
Fine.
Are we gonna
So-
prioritize these in any way?
Say it again.
Are we gonna prioritize
Well, I
these in any
think,
way?
I
or
think
just
we
gonna
need to
talk
be
about it?
prepared to do that. I think, Mike,
I want you to study this and ask me some questions, but when we come back next time and I can answer Willie's question and what we're looking at, then, and I want to go back over and massage these numbers one more time, but when we come back next time, we do need to be in the mode of prioritizing. That's why I wrote down, we got 121 days to get this wrapped up.
and so we've got, also, we'll have some pretty good numbers from the bonding folks.
Yes.
About what we can do for whatever.
Yep.
Okay, because I think, you know, how it gets phased out, how much we can do per cent of ad valorem tax over, you know, and then the estimates down the road. So if we, you know, if it buys $1 million now and $1.5 million 3 years from now, you know, we can talk about it in those kind of terms as well. And I'm sure you'll have some recommendations along those lines.
I'm going to shoot for April the 19th. That is our third Tuesday, and that would be our quarterly utility meeting anyways. And so I'll be able to answer some of your questions. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that
How
down.
does that look to everybody? The third Tuesday?
What's the date again?
The third Tuesday will be April 19th, excuse me.
And we'll just continue, make it special, we'll continue this discussion. We'll be ready to,
6 o'clock?
6 o'clock, ready to do some prioritizing, get Mike some good direction, and, you know, be near, getting pretty near figuring out what we want to call if we're going to do an election.
Just one other thing too, Mayor and Mike. I attended part of the meeting the other night, that the North End, the North Bastrop meeting with the discussion and everything, and they were talking about a lot of different things with drainage and with streets and things. And I know it's kind of addressed in some of the projects that we've got here and things that we've done in the past. And I'd asked some of those citizens, I couldn't stay for the whole meeting, but I'd asked some of the citizens to, you know, to make sure that their voices were heard, because there were lots of complaints about the drainage and the continued flooding on some of the areas up in that area. And I mean, I tried to explain to them that we only had so much money that we could deal with, and that drainage issues are a problem all over the city, but particularly in that area, they were concerned. And so I don't see any of them here, but I mean, I know that we did discuss it with them and asked them to make sure that their voices would be heard. So
Okay.
we might hear something later on from
I will get with Melissa. I was not able to attend that because of the SOA hearing going on, but I will get with her and see if we can identify, if it is, I'll expand that onto the list.
Well, I mean, if they have concerns, I mean, unless they turn them into to you or to Trey, they can't be addressed or even start to be addressed unless those addresses are turned into somebody at City Hall.
Right.
Well, after I left, I heard that they said that they had been speaking of these concerns for years, and that they didn't feel that they were being listened to. But a lot of them, you know, and unfortunately I had to leave, so I couldn't address that. But I did mention to them that there was a budget situation and there was a process that we had to go through, and they said that they had identified some of these needs in the past and felt like that we weren't listening to them.
Well, unfortunately, they're right, because they'll all tell you today that money north of the tracks isn't spent that much over the north side of tracks, and that's the comments they're making to you. And that's why they're making those comments to you about drainage and streets, because they feel that that northern part of town has been neglected by the city over the years.
But when I got here in '93, y'all had just completed a major drainage line
Right.
through the north, and the retention pond that is at the Public Works Yard was part of those drainage system improvements to the north. And as I recall, was a fairly expensive project that
Cut
y'all.
across Hill Street back toward Jefferson Street, between Hill and Pecan Street.
Because there was severe flooding before that project, and that addressed some of it, but it didn't cure the whole problem.
Okay. I'll look into it.
And we'll hear from the committee too, what they're putting together.
Okay.
Anybody not on the council want to say something? Tell us who you are, stand up and talk to us.
Hi, Richard Sparzik. Of course, my concern is Main Street. We've got 700K with EDC.
That's a pending project. That's
Yeah, I know
not,
it's pending, but I understand there's going to be a gap for putting lighting and some other things that haven't been accounted for. So not in the plan.
we're working on that now, and we're re-looking at the estimate, and the other thing that's gonna drive that is what the council wants to do on the parking layout.
Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else? I guess staff members can holler at Mike if they want to. Yeah, Herb?
The drainage situation with Onion Creek and Gills, with the Gills Branch.
Gil's about here, Potty on the north.
Right. Are you going to take a look at that at all? Because of all the drainage is very poor, as reported by the residents.
But it's not, it's not because of
Trees
Potty.
growing up and the thing and all.
Now, we did clean it all out, the course limited us on what we could take out of there. And if a tree was more than 6 inches in diameter, without getting a core permit, which would take about 2 years, and we wouldn't have that FEMA money left, we went ahead and left trees bigger than 6, but less than 6, we're taking out, and all the brush and all the debris and all the junk has been cleaned out within the last year.
What's the, are you talking
On
about
Gil's Branch.
Gil's Branch or Piney Creek?
Both.
Yeah, we
Oh,
cleaned
you're
those.
saying, okay, we didn't do anything on Piney, did we?
No, but we
We
did.
cleaned out Gil's Branch.
We cleaned out Gills Branch, and up in Piney Creek, we cleaned out all around the power poles. That was a fuelage reduction part of that program.
Okay.
But we cleaned out all the junk, debris, and everything from up here at the Public Works where it starts, all the way down to the railroad tracks was all cleaned out. And I've been working with the Long family, and I hope to bring to council either the first or second meeting. We got allocated an additional $90,000 to finish cleaning out like we did this first part on the Long property to take us all the way to the river.
So stuff on the, just to make sure I'm clear, stuff on the east, water that falls on the east side of the north part of town goes into Gills Branch?
Yes.
Okay. And that's so we won't know till we have a flood, I guess, how much better it's going to be. But
I would say-
Everything from 95 comes down to Gills Branch, goes all the way to the river.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But
I'm just saying even, well, whatever.
Well, what we did is going to help, but it's not the total solution.
Right, it's still.
Well, Piney Creek's not only just a city problem, if it is, it's in the county as well.
Oh, yes.
And part of it, like that bridge, is part responsibility of the city and the county. So it's not all on the city, but Gills Branch, all of that is in the city.
But I will say that after cleaning it out, the last storm event that we had a significant rain, we did not get any complaints from the people in and around, I'm going to say from 95 to the railroad tracks. Now, the north is not as affected by Gills Branch as much as Piney Creek affects the north. And we did not do that kind of cleanup in Piney Creek.
But I think when the city addresses the railroad bridge to say around the area of the water plant, sewer plant, clean out that area back in there, or even the old Lover's Lane, you'll see all that cleaned out. That'll help as far as water running through there.
well, have we ever had Piney overflow? Did you know?
Not that I know of, because I've always considered Piney Creek out in the county.
Why, you don't care if it overflows if it's in the county?
No, but I mean, when we built that bridge over there that crosses Piney Creek, it was the city and the county split the cost.
Oh.
That's what I'm saying.
I got you.
It's just not all the
I'm just
city
wondering,
issue.
I'm just wondering about if water does flow into Piney and it never has overflowed, it shouldn't be much of a problem. I mean, Gills
Well, a
Branch,
big flood on the river's gonna back into Piney.
I mean,
well,
Yeah.
Piney Creek overflows the low water crossing all the
Yeah.
time.
well,
All right.
You know,
That's because the water backs up.
well, yeah, you want to build a real bridge, that's okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's still got to be looked at.
I made a note of it.
And the other thing is in what was the North End Task Force Committee, I think what they were also implying was there's some inefficiencies with the water drainage. Maybe some things have changed since that system was installed. They're saying the water doesn't really flow into the retention pond. It seems to come over the sides. And many of those homes are down below the road. So they're saying that basically the water just, it isn't going in where we think it's going, it's coming in their way, towards their
That's
driveways
a
and all.
40-year conversation.
And that's something they would just like to at least look at.
Okay.
Especially if we're going to make any alterations.
Well, and I'm sure he's heard the citizens right over there on the north, I call it Jefferson Street where it dead ends by the railroad tracks and goes north for 2 blocks. When you cross that property into an area right there between Pecan and Hill, that was part of a drainage system that was put in that was connected to our retention pond by the Public Works Yard, but I believe that drainage system isn't working anymore. I don't know if it's just clogged up or it's just not working, but
Okay.
that's a concern over there in that neighborhood
Okay, we'll check
between
that.
Pecan and Hill Street.
Well, I know, I remember 40 years ago, or close to 40 years ago, people up there saying that we did some, or maybe 35, we did some work up there, and it was, you know, they expected water to run uphill and all that kind of stuff. And here's another one for you. I heard an old timer say that it used to work, drainage worked really well till they put the railroad track in. And they raised it up and split the town in 2. So, I don't know, you know, it's been going on for a long time, let's put it that way.
Now we have a siren.
There you go. Anybody else?
But I made note of all this, we'll map it out.
Okay, well, let's move on to item B.
Initially,
Sorry.
I was not going to ask that Ms. Brown attend tonight, but I got the impression that there were several issues that the council wanted to discuss on charter amendments, more than just the water, so I asked her to come sit in on the charter discussion. I think there's 3 or 4 topics at least that the council wants to talk about, so I'm turning
I
over
know
to you.
Willie's the first one, the only one I know about, so let me turn to you.
Well, mine's pretty simple and straightforward, you know, and somebody tell me if I'm wrong, when we talked about, when we passed the resolution, not only on that water, or selling water to outside, and the electrical issue, or electric utility as well, when we passed those resolutions, that some future council could come in and overturn those resolutions, so to have to put a better teeth into it, if it went through and was placed in a charter, it would always have to go through a election to get overturned, so I was just asking if you wanted to add those 2 deals to the charter, and I'm sure Ms. Brown is gonna tell you, there's gonna be, the wording's going to have to be right on the water, because, and I'll let you address that, what I'd ask you about the water as far as WCID and aqua water in case of an emergency. You can speak to that if you want to.
Yes, sir. The concept that you expressed is correct, of course, to ensure that the citizens would have an opportunity to vote on any future proposal to sell either the water, whether it was raw water rights or infrastructure, or any other city utility that was involved in the resolution. If we put it as a charter prohibition and said that no transfer, lease, conveyance, those kinds of things could be made without an election, that would mean, just as Willie said, that it would be necessary to take that proposal to the citizens and allow them the opportunity to express their view on that. One thing I think that Willie was referencing that we would want to be cautious about, we want to be sure that whatever verbiage we used was carefully crafted so that, for example, we were, the intent I think would always be to prohibit what we think of as water marketing. In other words, taking the water that's Bastrop's water and sending it to San Antonio or to, I don't know, Victoria or something like that for some kind of commercial use. But we would want to always be sure that we hadn't overstepped or over-constricted the council's right, for example, to provide for special districts that we have consented to as subdivisions to come in and take care of them. Or, for example, to serve our neighboring and adjacent governmental entities in the event of an emergency. For example, if there was a fire and someone's tank ran dry, we'd want we obviously wouldn't want to wait for an election to decide that we can help someone out in the case of an emergency or something like that. So the wording on it, as far as being a prohibition, we want to be very careful about that to make sure that the council always would have the flexibility to take care of those kinds of eventualities that the council needs to do for safety, health, and welfare. But that would leave in the citizens' hands the general prohibition against commercial marketing or water marketing that I believe is what the intent was of the resolution originally. Just FYI, for y'all's information, these types of elections, charter elections, have to be conducted on uniform election dates. We now have to do those a year, one in November, one in May. One in November will be November 8th, and the last day to call that election, there's not a detailed election calendar up on the Secretary of State's website for that election yet, but the last day to call that election is August 22nd. So we need to start working on our ballot verbiage if you decided to do this.
And the same time frame applies. That's why it's on 121 days, because we got, it all ties together.
Sure. And it's simply a matter of getting our verbiage exactly like the council's happy with it, getting it translated into Spanish, getting it on a ballot, and then including it in the election material. So it's not a complicated thing. Y'all have been through a charter amendment before.
JC, could you go over the rules of how often we must have a charter a charter review and that sort of thing?
Yeah, your current charter asks that you have a charter review. I believe it is. I think it asks that your city manager report to you every
5 years, I think.
5 years, just to let you know if he has identified any glaring problems or irregularities with the charter. And some of you have also asked me, are we tripping over one particular problem with the charter over and over? And luckily, I'm not aware of any that are giving us a problem. Every once in a while, a question will come up, but usually we've faced it before and we've managed to get some clarification on it.
But we are at the 5-year mark this year.
So let's finish Willie's and go back to the general question. I should have asked that first.
And one thing I need to let you know is remember that you can only amend your charter once every 2 years. So if you did this November, then you'd be prohibited from making any other changes for another 2 years because they don't want you doing this over and over and over.
Does that mean if the amendments fail, we're still prohibited?
Yes.
Okay.
Fail, pass, or in between.
So, Willie, would you want to add the electric utility to that?
Well, I mean, I think it makes sense. I mean, I don't know, it just,
we've
well, I started with the water, and my concern was all these people that are continuously coming up to council meetings and thinking that some council or somebody's going to sell water from the city to somebody else. This will basically put this to rest because it won't be done by a council. It'll have to go to a vote of citizens.
Well, I would suggest we consider add the electric utility to it too.
I'm fine with that.
I think that makes good sense because I think because of the history with the electric utilities and water and other things in the past, that it has cause for concern. So if we do one, we might as well do the other.
One thing I'd like to add, if we do this, is that if we do sell water or provide water to another entity such as Aqua Water, that they cannot on-sell it to someone else.
I see.
So they're not the go-between to provide it to San Antonio.
But if, other than their customers.
Then their customers.
Then their customers here, yeah.
They would have to have an identified need for their customers
Right.
to buy water from
I
us.
want to have that specifically spelled out, though,
Yeah.
so that they can't be the go-between to get the water.
And I'm not sure, but maybe we should think about too, if we should put some sort of clause that we would not be selling it more than the market price, more than the fair market price.
Well, normally, we set that through our rates, and normally, your out-of-city rates are usually higher than your in-city rates, and that's in about any city that I've worked in.
Okay,
And
so that's,
I think, yeah.
Okay.
I think what we do want to be careful of, and one reason that our charter has been successful, and hasn't tripped us up too much is because we've made it the skeleton, and then given the council still the ability to make the details. And so let's put the general prohibitions on with a few of the details, but when we get down into things like setting rates and things like that, I think if the citizens voted to let you sell a component or water or whatnot, then they trust the council to set the terms of the deal
Fair enough.
appropriately. Does that make sense?
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so, and would work all the language and all of that. One thing
Right.
I would like y'all to think about now that you've raised the issue of the electric utility too, is whether or not you'd want to put that as one proposition or as two. In other words, we can say there won't be any sale of water or water infrastructure. There won't be any sale of the electric utility, electric infrastructure, or we can group them together
think
and
they
say no sale of city utility or city infrastructure, including water, electric, and
In other words, the people
Good
could
thinking.
think, we would give you permission to do whatever you want with one, but not both.
Right, they might say, well,
Yeah,
we.
if we
we
put it
love that
together,
idea,
it's
you
both,
hold on to your
all or
water, but
nothing.
we don't care what you do over here.
Right, right.
But it may be that you may think that that's too complicated and you'd rather have one ballot proposition. So mull that over. We've got a lot of time. Luckily, Mike's done a really good job of putting this, the whole idea of the bonds, everything in front of you in time that we're not in that kind of panic rush mode that some cities get into. So.
Let me ask we've done with Willie, so let me ask the general question that was raised. Do we, I mean, time's short, but do we need to create some kind of a charter review committee? Or can we just do it ourselves and listen to the public?
Traditionally, this city created a charter committee that created the initial charter, and then after the 5-year time frame, there were a few things that needed to be cleaned up, and one of the things that the council then was sitting wanted to change the terms from rather 2 3-year terms to 2
Three 2-year terms.
3 2-year terms to 2 3-year terms to give more stability. So, and that went through a charter review process. I think the council did a great job. It was a good cross-section of the entire community, and they vetted a lot of issues and came up with, I think, 4 or 5 ballot propositions, as I recall.
And on things of a more global nature, if you're going to have a half dozen or a dozen revisions, then a commission is a good way to go. If you're dealing with one or two concerted business issues, a commission takes a lot of time, a lot of energy. It can take a month or 2 to get a charter commission up and running and ready. On one ballot proposition, that's not usually the way it goes.
Well, but citing Mike's history that he referred to, the one time we've had a charter review committee, we didn't have any idea whatsoever we wanted to do anything, make any changes. And all those came out of the committee.
No,
So,
except the one thing the council did direct is their evaluation of whether we should stay with the current terms for council members, 3 2-year terms, or change it to 2 3-year terms.
Yeah.
And there was a considerable amount of discussion.
directed to the committee.
Yes. and
I
then-
didn't remember that, I'm sorry.
And then the commission had an extensive discussion, and at the end of that, they were pretty much in line with what the council had asked them to look at, because they felt it created more stability than having this complete every 2 years. And I think it has helped considerably.
But we,
And one of the things about that change, if you'll remember, that change had some statutory ripples in other parts of the charter that had to be accounted for. So it was a complicated change in that regard.
well, so I'm not hearing any energy for a committee or a commission. Mike, do you have anything in mind?
I will go through the charter over the next 2 weeks, because the time is the 5-year time frame. We're right there right now. And I will look over it, and if I see anything, I will include that either in my one of my April city manager's report to the council. I would say that I think Ms. Brown makes a good point. If the council feels that this is, to me, a business issue as much as it is a charter issue, and I'm not so concerned that this was the only one that we were looking at. I think it's clearly within the council's authority to initiate that. But if we're going to look at several, then I think we would have to look at creating a charter review committee. And to do that and get all that done in 121 days, you're probably looking at May of next year during the council election before you could get those propositions in order. Because it was a pretty lengthy process last time.
Yeah, put the same people together, it might go faster, but.
Yes, right.
Okay, but you'll give us any advice pretty soon? Okay,
Yes.
there are other issues. Anybody have another issue?
I have one.
Yeah.
I would like to propose that we add something to the charter that says no elected official can be a voting member of any city board.
Amen.
We have kind of a problem with the BEDC being known as the mini city council. We're about to probably create a new board that is also going to be in charge of millions of dollars on the DMO, and I think it's double voting if the council member also votes on that board, and then the issues also come to council and they vote again. So I would like to propose that you can be on board, but it's ex officio only.
Anything else?
You had one other one that you wanted to bring up? You want to bring that up? Okay.
Not ready for that one yet.
That is a pretty complex one. Okay.
So, I don't know that we need some time to think about it. See if any citizens, we've just introduced this, so see if any citizens have anything to say between now and maybe the first April meeting.
Why don't we put a public hearing up and on the first meeting in April?
Yeah, see if anybody comes.
And just an open session and public hearing for citizens to make comments to the council on any charter revisions we should take under consideration.
Okay.
Okay.
And that would be the time that if we do get considerable discussion, or that we would start thinking about the charter review committee. Otherwise, with what we have so far, I think the council can handle.
I agree with that.
Anything else? Anybody out there got anything to say?
I just hope we don't drag this process out about this charter review committee, because I don't think we're going to end up with too much that's going to be more important to the citizens than the sale of utilities by some future council without the approval of the city vote. And I sure hate to miss that opportunity by trying to create a committee that might drag it out and drag it out.
Yeah, and if you, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, the only problem with that is if we do that and just go forward, we'll have to wait 2 years before we can do anything else also, so that we have to really seriously consider that.
I understand that, but in the last 2 years, how many people have come to you with charter, wanting to put something on a charter amendment? Nothing, nobody.
And I think Ms. Brown, I think your first charter committee that put that charter together took into account that this was a major transition going from a general law city to a home rule city, and created the framework to give the council some latitude to operate in, and there'll be some more fine tuning coming down, but I think we're still in that process, and I think there's still learning that needs to be done, and there are some other things to be considered, but I don't think we're at a population level yet that would necessitate that being an issue at this point. But I would say that, subject to, we can't vote unless I hear a real backlash, I would like to start working with Ms. Brown on the water and BP&L issue to kind of give you a thought of at least what the ballot information might look like.
I think the reason to do that, Mike, is that this is an extension of a resolution that's already been passed by the council.
Right.
Not the electricity part, but I'd be surprised if there's much disagreement with that. But
We have one on
We have a
electricity.
resolution on the electric
Yeah.
utility as well.
oh, we do?
That was
Yeah.
first, that was the first one.
Okay, so we've got two resolutions on both of them. So I can't imagine that there's going to be any pushback at all about getting this one ready.
Right.
So, and I think we understand the urgency of it, and it's just it's putting in sort of a little stronger form what we've already passed.
Okay.
You know, to
And-
me, excuse me, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think that working on that one's fine.
To me, I think you can combine both of them, because, I mean, in as simple as language as you can, no city utility owned by the city, you know, will be, you know, blah, blah, blah. That's the consent of the voters of the city. I mean, I don't think we need, I think you confuse people when you say, if you separate them.
Well, the principles.
Maybe not.
The principle's the same, the issue is stronger on the water because of what we've been going through. But the principle, I think, would be the same both ways, because they're major assets for the city, major responsibilities. Last chance.
Okay, again, I painted a 30,000-foot level for you tonight, and I'm going to have on my city manager's report for our first meeting in April. You know, I want to hear some feedback. Don't think I thought of everything. I did flip through the 2015 minutes, and I did pick up some additional streets, as you've seen, that we've talked about over time, but I could have missed something. And I will point out there's nothing listed for Parks and Rec. Parks and Rec plan has just been updated, and we're taking a trip on Thursday, maybe to bring some good news back to you next council meeting, maybe a bigger facility, and so that could change the dynamics of what you might want to look at from a recreation standpoint.
So, and I'm sorry,
Go
William.
ahead.
Were you thinking in terms of the rodeo arena too when you said that just now?
Well, I have at least, if I've misunderstood, we were going to do the rodeo improvements out of the hotel motel tax fund, when we elevated that up to a tier 1. But that doesn't say that we couldn't issue bonds and use hotel motel tax to pay for those bonds.
But the beauty is that, you know, you got past that.
No, yeah, I agree, but I was under the impression that we didn't quite have enough money to take out of the hot funds to do what we needed to do. Therefore, we were looking at other funding. Have we passed that mark now?
Well, we certainly, the only thing that we haven't addressed, I think, in the first phase of improvements is covering the arena. Now, we've called for the pen improvements and refurbishing a lot of the existing facility out there. I would say the two items that we probably did not address was covering the facility and a workout area prior to going into the arena. For those that have horses and someone who has rodeo, it is really important that you work with your horse. You just don't throw a saddle on and ride into the rodeo arena.
Right.
One last comment?
Sure, yeah.
And in regards, I think, to Mike or somebody made an open comment, you know, I've always talked about that 60% level, and seeing what you have on paper tonight and what you're going to come back with in the future as far as general fund debt. And to get a lot accomplished, I don't know if it's realistic to stay at that cap or below. I don't think it is. I don't know. But, you know, here's the luxury of this. If we, depending on how much we put on there, if the people want to say, I'll spend this much in improvements for the city and don't mind if my tax rate is this, that's their will, and that's how it goes to a vote of the citizens. And they'll decide that when it's time.
Well, and another reality is that we're going to be all of our lives, and maybe longer than that, in this horrible transition situation in this city. And it's going to be terrible trying to provide the kind of necessary infrastructure we need for a lot of things. And so, you know, having that kind of flexibility that you just mentioned, I think may be really important for us going forward. It's going to be more and more important as we go along. It's going to be very hard for future councils to keep up with what we've got to do.
And that's historic of any growing community.
Yep.
That's the biggest
It's just the way
challenge.
it is. Yeah.
The biggest challenge they face.
Right. Yeah, anybody else?
Yeah, I'm just back to this rodeo arena. I'm just like a dog with a bone about this. I know that. So you think that from the hot funding that's coming up, we'll be able to complete what we need to do? Because if we have any other recreation projects coming in, I don't want to dilute the work that we're doing on the rodeo arena.
Okay.
I want to get one thing done before we start another, if possible.
Okay.
I remember people here saying that they, in the audience when we had a public meeting, people saying that they wanted to be sure that all the parks were taken care of to the best of their ability, whatever they had to do before we started on new things.
Right. Now, the only difference is because of what you got approved, we can use hotel motel tax funds
That's
up there.
great.
But we can't in the other parks.
Okay, so it won't dilute that
Right.
expenditure.
How would you feel about two projects, getting the main stuff done and then look down the road doing the roof?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, we're gonna have a lot more flexibility with our money when we get the DMO in. The DMO can take a look at the rodeo arena and evaluate how soon we need to spend hot money fixing the roof. But if he could, building a roof over the arena. And then, in the meantime, Mike can get the arena up to speed with the money he's got. So my question is, does that two-part process of getting there make sense? Or does it need to be all done at
No.
once? Needs to all be done at once?
Well, not at once, but it needs to be not have any gaps between it, because we've seen what happens when that happens.
Well, then maybe we ought to put this on the list.
I made a note, and we'll put together a phase plan, and then you can look at it if you want to fund it over a 3-year time frame, or if you want to issue bonds and do it all at once.
No, I'm not, it's fine. I'm okay with not, that's fine, okay. That's good.
Because we don't, I mean, if that's our commitment, and if we don't develop a plan one way or the other, then 3 years from now, we're going to say, well, how come we haven't covered the arena?
Exactly.
So you got to do one or the other. Develop a schedule and say we're going to allocate X amount of hotel, and we'll do this in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, or we'll issue bonds and do them all at one time.
Well, and the other option that council have, Kay, I'm sure whatever happens, you know, we've got the rodeo in tier 1.
Yeah.
And we're not going to, and I would assume, I mean, the council's going to be making the decisions on tier 1. So if we decide to have less money in whatever the other tiers or the other stuff, we just don't give that much money that year and we fix the roof. So,
Right.
or build the roof.
Yeah.
So that would,
That's a good point.
that would be a
Good
way
thought,
to do
But,
it.
good
you
thought.
know, as long as you got it in phases, I think it's gonna work, because, you know, after we start our own DMO, that 43% that we're paying today to someone is virtually gonna go away, so that's gonna mean more money for us that we have available
More
for
to
us.
work with in
Yeah.
various ways.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So, but Mike's going to lay out, Mike's going to lay out a phasing so you can get a better feel for that, Kay. Is that what you understand?
I'm sorry?
Mike's going to lay out a phasing of some sort on on all the stuff the rodeo arena needs, and kind of get a picture of it so there's a plan so you can feel comfortable
Thank
versus a bond, right? Versus
Yes,
putting it
yes,
up on.
And then you can look
Have you
at
seen,
it.
Mayor, have you seen the cost or anything?
I'm just going with
Yeah, I mean,
council
I haven't
members'
seen
desires
any
here.
cost.
No,
We've got some, but some we got to pull together.
Yeah, Trey and Mike have been working on that, so it'll be interesting to see what, I know y'all have been working hard on that. Thank you.
One further question, Mike. Do we need to think about any debt for this plan that you have for the expanded
We might.
shelter project?
Um,
You might?
We might not.
Okay.
I won't know until, I want to go see the facility, because it's a FEMA-proof facility, and it'll be larger than 6,000 square feet, but it won't be 22,000 square feet. It's going to be somewhere in the middle,
Okay.
but it will be large enough to house a gym. Now, all I'm going to say is you may not like the appearance of it because of the way it's constructed, but it's pretty innovative construction. And I'm going Thursday to look at them on site, because I do have some concerns about maintenance costs. And though they're less expensive to construct, I don't want to saddle the city with a big maintenance cost, especially with keeping it up, because we thought we saved 15 cents. Now we're spending $2.50 maintaining it. So,
But I'm sorry.
oh, I'm done.
If we go that direction, though, then the logical thing for us to do would be scale back a little bit on our bond election and sell some COs, because we don't want to wait till November to know we can do that.
Right.
So that'll be another thing we need to face when we see his plan,
Yeah.
which is a good option that we have. And if we want to wait for the citizens, I don't think it'll work time-wise.
No, we can't.
They can come talk to us when we vote.
Yeah.
Anything else? We're going to return to from our workshop session into our special session. Anybody have any action we need to take besides the two of y'all?
I'm ready for a motion.
Second.
Gary,
I'm moving.
you're moving.
Adjourned.
Willie?
Second.
We're supposed to call the roll according to the parliamentarian over here. Would you call the roll around the room?
Delrosa,
Yes.
Yes.
Jeffrey,
Yes.
Doc, Ms. Kay,
Yes,
Ms. Kelly.
Okay.
Okay.
We're adjourned. Thank you all.
thank you.
Thanks for the food.
Yeah.
Gosh, where you mind?